Hi everybody, welcome to this episode. Today we have Umang Navnit Rajdev, and he is somebody who is very interesting in terms of his background, and we will get there very shortly. So without further ado, let's go over and chat with Umang. Hello, Umang.
Hi, Mandy. Nice to be here.
Yeah, no, welcome. How did you get here? It's been interesting, hasn't it, in the last couple of days, and you've been flying around and...
Yeah, so I've just driven over, but just come back from Kenya after a bit of a journey that involved missed flight connections and long layovers. But we're here. Happy New Year to everyone, and glad to be here on the show today.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for joining us, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you. We met at a conference in Liverpool, didn't we?
Yes, the Not Another Conference.
Not another conference.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed, actually, because you were picked from a selection of people just randomly to be on a panel.
Yeah, I unknown secret is I didn't know what I was putting my name into the hat for, but it was only at lunchtime that Matt said to me, "How did you put your name in?" I said, "Oh, yeah, what do I win?" And it's like, no, you don't win anything. You get to be on the podcast. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that'll be funny though. But it's good. I really enjoyed it. And I think it was a nice way to just get everyone to meet me and me to meet everyone, because I'm new to this world of like agile delivery and sort of IT delivery. So it was a nice way to just get to share my story and get everyone to just meet them.
Yeah, because everybody's got a story. So let's talk about your story. How did you start, like your early career? I remember reading about your early career. You did your aeronautical engineering degree at Southampton. So I'm really looking forward to finding out, your inspirational journey. So how did it all start?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Kenya. I moved to the UK to study at the age of 18 for university, and kind of stumbled into aeronautical engineering, to be honest. I love doing maths and physics, and I thought, well, my parents had always encouraged us to find something that you enjoy doing and that you're passionate about. But it was really tricky in Kenya to be able to get access to a lot of people practicing STEM careers, to be able to understand what does an engineer do, what does a physicist do. And so the exposure to such careers was a little bit limited, but I had a cousin who had done aeronautical engineering and was enjoying what he was doing. So I spoke to him and said, actually, that sounds interesting. We'll go and try that out. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, we'll keep pivoting from that and try and just see what comes up next. So I studied aeronautical engineering. Went to work in an automotive company straight after. So I was working for Jaguar Land Rover, then did a bit of AI and engineering, and that was my way sort of into the technology sector. Mm-hmm. I have always also had a bit of an incline towards like IT and technology and sort of computer science. But that just at the time of decision making perhaps wasn't guided the right way or didn't have the right exposure, and so I ended up doing engineering.
So was it your cousin who kind of like encouraged you try the aeronautical engineering, and you tried that?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of that, but also just understanding that with a degree in STEM in the UK, there's a lot of flexibility that comes with that. Like the UK is quite forgiving in terms of careers straight after university. There's a lot of on-the-job training that's provided straight after. It's both good and bad for people who know what they want to do. It restricts them from getting straight into work. But for people that are still trying to figure out, which I think a lot of people are, then it gives you the opportunity to just go and try different things. And that's how I ended up I studied aeronautical, but went and worked automotive, still applying a little bit of what I'd done in the aerospace sector.
And that's quite encouraging.
Yeah.
What you just said, Yeah.
Yeah, I think even now, like I've been working for more than 10 years across still engineering space, but a variety of different engineering spaces and morphing more towards the technology side. I think I still don't know the last 5 years have been very different. It's not how I had planned they would go, but they're fantastic, and I'm glad I am where I am. And I don't know what the next 5 years will look like. Again, like I've changed my career over the last 5 years, and again, the next 5 years might be something completely different. But that's the joy of accepting that actually we don't know where we might end up, but just keeping your options open and learning from people and doing something, just being open to trying different things. I think that's what I've done, and I've enjoyed doing that.
That's fantastic. And would you say, as you've been, changing your career path and, trying different opportunities, what's shaped you in terms of trying those opportunities? So,
I think a big part of that has always been influenced by just looking for opportunities. So, like, the personal history for me is like coming as an international student to the UK is very expensive, and you have to pay all the money up front. And I've personally seen like my dad and my mom, saving every penny, every shilling in Kenya, from the day they were like my age, so that we could go out and explore the opportunities that we wanted to go and pursue. And they've been nice enough to never have go and do this and go and do that. It was very much go and do what you want, but endeavor to be the best at what you want to be at. Like, always try and do the best at whatever you're trying to do. And whether that was you want to go and study here, there, or anywhere else, whatever opportunity is the best, we will try and provide for. And with that also inherently comes a little bit of pressure of, well, they've been saving for the last 20, 25 years so that we could get this opportunity to go and to come here and study and do something that's interesting to us. And so a lot of my sort of early adulthood has been always sort of influenced by trying to always look for opportunities to try and make the most of, well, if my parents are doing all this for me, I ought to at least always try and find opportunities. So I've never been closed off to opportunities, whether they're it's not just, well, I'm an engineer, so those are the only opportunities I'm seeking. It's anything and everything that I can go and learn from and make the most of being here, I'm going to go and try and do. And that started from school. So I think I've just carried that on, and that's how I've ended up where I have.
So quite an adventurer.
Yes.
Umang, are there any early mistakes that taught you something, really valuable?
I think two things that come to mind when thinking about like lessons, maybe mistakes, lessons around my very early career was as I was leaving university, I was thinking about doing something more around social impact and social enterprise. So I was actually headed to go and do something like that. Inherently, visa restrictions meant it was easier to get a job than to start a social enterprise at the time. So I did start that as a bit of a side project, but it never materialized into something substantial that I could do something full time on. And so I joined professional job as an engineer. But at the back of my mind, there's still this thing of, well, I want to try and do something bigger and better than sort of sitting and just doing my job. And I think a lot of people that leave university, I noticed this across a lot of my friends who had left university, and especially people who, like I said, are trying to look for lots and lots of opportunities. The moment you start work, I think one of the things that we face is this, I want to be doing more. I want to change the world. But I'm sat here behind a desk, perhaps, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was one of my first thoughts. And a lot of the people in my friend circle had that same sort of thought process, that I want to do more, but I'm sat here doing this. I want to change the world, but I'm being restricted. I feel like a lot of early graduates feel that like, I want to change the world. Like, I did all this, and you're also sold this vision of, if you study, finish university, you're going to be able to do all of these things. And then perhaps a lot of those opportunities aren't quite there as soon as you join the workforce. And so I had that realization that, okay, how can I still meet that itch of trying to change the world while being in a workplace environment? Mm-hmm. And what was really important for me was the realization that changing the world isn't necessarily changing 7 billion people. And, yes, if that opportunity still comes, never say no. But it is also very much about changing the worlds and the lives of the people that you're interacting with every day, right? So this is back in the day when we used to sit in the office, you have 10 people sat around you. And if you can make the lives of those 10 people better, then that is changing their world. And in that little way, you've changed the world in whatever little circle of influence you have. And the best example I'll start with that was also around, you don't know what everybody at work is going through, right? Like, someone might be going through a divorce. Someone might have lost a parent. Someone might have lost a child. And yet they're turning up to work because that's what either they need or that's what is needed by their family. And so they turn up to work and have an interaction with you, and you have a choice at that point. Like, are you going to make that interaction good for them or bad for them? And you could make their world good or bad. And so that's something that's genuinely shaped a lot of the thought process I have with interactions at work, is how can you make people's lives better at work? Because that's the circle of influence we have.
That's just really impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, really impressive, and also very inspirational, the fact that you just felt like that. You didn't seek to, well, I'm just assuming, have you had any kind of coaching or mentoring? Like, how have you kind of got to that point in your work and your decision making that actually this is what's really important? So who's influenced you?
I think there's many facets to sort of influence and mentorship, right? Like, you can have professional mentorship in a professional sort of work setting. You can have personal mentorship to do with relationships. You can have physical mentorship, like a gym coach. And so one of the things one of the ways in which I like to think of them is, like, I have mentors in each of those areas, but they're not restricted and siloed to, like, I don't restrict and silo the learning I have in one area to just that area, because what I've seen is that everything is applicable in all areas, right? Like, and people are people, and whether you interact with them at work or in a spiritual environment or an emotional environment or a physical environment, the setting is different, but the people are still people. And so I do have, like, people that have influenced or mentored across those areas. In particular, if we're talking perhaps more in a professional sense, there's a couple of people. I'll maybe go back to some of the earliest and then come back to more recently. At university, I had a friend. His name was Utsav. His name is Utsav. And he heavily influenced me around this whole view of, actually, we can do more with our careers and with the expertise that we have to try and improve the world in whatever different way that we can. He's currently out there, starting a social enterprise himself and working on things like that because the opportunities come up. So he influenced my thought process around how can we use the skills that we have for good. And that was towards the end of my degree. So that helped me pivot a little bit. And then as I started my work at Jaguar Land Rover, I used to sit next to someone who was approaching the end of their career. So they were about to retire in the next year or two. His name was Martin. And one of the best interactions that I still regularly recall, we were at an IET conference a few weeks ago. And I was referencing this, that one of the things that goes away when you're not working in person, especially for early career graduates, is this opportunity to learn just by sitting next to people, like the osmosis or the diffusion of learning from people who have had different experiences. So most people would finish, let's say, work in our area around 4:00. Martin would leave at 5 because he had a different shift pattern. And I'm a much later, like I wake up much later in the day and prefer working late in the evening. So I would be there between 4 and 5 when most of the work has finished and we're just sat there sort of talking about things that we could learn. And that for me was a very valuable experience, learning from someone who had been doing engineering for 35 years. For 35 years, what are the small things that they can pass on to us that you would not get in by setting meetings with people? And we would just sit every day, I think, for more than a year, and it was the first year of my career. Mm-hmm. So I got a lot of informal mentoring and coaching from him just on discipline and how to deal with work and sort of how to present your work and navigate office politics, because that always happens. And that was really valuable. And then more recently, Matt Turner. Yeah. So he's an Agile coach at our workplace that's working with our team. And he's taught me a lot about just, better ways of delivery, better ways of working, better ways of understanding people and behaviors so that we can collaborate better. And that's been really, really fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. It's, okay. It's just so, it's warm and inspirational and just all of the kinds of things that you really do want people to be, like have that compassion, have that kind of a mindset of being better human beings. And I can't help thinking in my mind, and it keeps coming up, so I have to ask you this question. So I think you're doing it, but I want to know, like, what other kind of world impact would you make? Because you're sat here talking about these things which are so important for human beings and people to grasp, that actually if they can make their inner circles better, that would have such a great ripple effect on others. But what else would you do?
So a big part of what forms me, like what makes me is community. So I was sharing with you just earlier that we've recently moved to Leicester, and part of the reason behind that actually for us was the community around there. And we've just had a baby, so 1-year-old baby now. And again, the reason to move to Leicester was better community. And they say it takes a community and a village to raise a child, and that was part of the reason for us to move there. A lot of what my wife and I do is revolves around community. So in our local community, we run a youth group that runs countrywide actually, but has a hub in London and Leicester. That's very much revolved around mentoring and giving young people opportunities in sort of spiritual, emotional, physical spaces for them to, become better leaders, better people in the community, serve one another, serve the community. And I think opportunities to create more hubs like that, opportunities to work with young people like that would definitely, and create a community around those opportunities, I think would definitely be something that we'd try and, encourage more and more around. And I think I like there's inherently an influence from the community we're in, but there's also a big influence in that thought process that I have from my wife. Like, she's a mental health practitioner for young people. Mm-hmm. So she works with young kids that are going through challenges mentally and emotionally. And so just seeing the impact that, giving young people opportunities and guidance and mentorship can create such a big ripple effect, not just for them and their families and the people that they're going to work with. That has been quite fantastic. And so anything and anywhere that we can create more opportunities for young people to come together as communities and create an impact, because that's what everyone wants to do. And I feel like sometimes it's hard to be able to get those opportunities. So everywhere that we can create those in diverse communities, cultural communities, the better it is.
And how do people manage that kind of, I don't want to call it plateau. I want to say something like, that kind of consistent way of being where, it's positive, or people are, problem solving together, thinking together, talking together. How do we continue that and not sort of think, oh, this impact's been made, oh, let's make another impact.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because impact definitely sounds massive.
Yeah.
But how do we create the awareness and the acceptance of, like, for example, you're kind of, when you messaged me, you said, oh, my flight's been delayed and I'm not really sure how it's going to be when I get back.
Yeah.
So I was calm, you were calm. So how do we kind of continue this behavior?
Yeah. I think in terms of continue, like, I think there's perhaps two facets on that. Like, in terms of continuing behavior around accepting things as they come, I think a big part of that is accepting things as they come. Like, there is a circle of influence that sometimes is beyond what we can influence. And in this case, my flight connection was missed and we did the best that we could. And this time we'd planned for it because the same thing had happened on our way to Kenya. So there's a little bit of, we'll plan as much as you can, but the rest accept as it is and do the best that is available within your circle of influence. But the second one then is also definitely do the things that are within your circle of influence, right? Like, when opportunities do arise and there are opportunities either professionally or personally that you can create, then we should definitely be creating that. I think in particular, a word that I like that you said was consistency. And actually, how do we consistently create these environments and these sort of places where people can grow and create impact? I think the big word there is consistency. And you also touched on, like, impact feels like a really big thing. And sometimes when impact is, I'm going to use the word small, but the word I'm looking for is not small. So when it's a smaller impact, people stop doing it consistently. But actually, a smaller impact done consistently is the right thing to do. It's the more sustainable thing to do, right? Like, the classic story of you've got a rock and you're trying to cut it in half with droplets of water every day. We'll cut the rock in half. But if you just poured a liter of water over it won't do anything. So that consistency of what we call little impact is not actually little. Like, and that's the same thing with that whole workplace sort of narrative that I had, that if you can consistently show up to work, do the best you can, and just be nice to the people around you, then surely those people, when they go home, if you're working with 10 people in a given day and you can make their lives a little bit better, or at least not make them bad, then those people are not going home annoyed, and they're not annoyed with, annoyed from work, carrying work pressures at home, and then that causes family stresses, and then the kids are struggling. Like, there is such a rippled impact with just the small interactions we have with people. And those are the same things I was trying to also reflect on during the flight. Like, there are certain people during that whole journey that made those impacts a lot nicer for us and acknowledged that we have a baby. There were others that just completely ignored the fact that we're traveling with a baby. And those are the things that, like, they could have made our day a lot easier, but they haven't. So I think it's the small, consistent things, and role modeling, mentoring, all of those things play such a big part in creating these environments. And I think particularly also for people from diverse cultural backgrounds, the more opportunities and role modeling like we can do, the better it is, because they can see that actually people from my background, my culture, my diversity, my group are also able to create and have these opportunities.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Great.
I really love that. So you've basically had this wonderful early career start, journey, inspiration. So many things have taught you these wonderful values, including your wife.
Yes.
So tell us so in your current role, what do you actually do? What's your current role?
So I currently work at Rolls-Royce SMR, so small modular reactors. I'm the engineering capability lead for our software. What that means in simpler words is I look after all of the engineering product design software that our engineers need to be able to design the nuclear power plant. That includes tools like CAD, CAM, PLM, and now increasingly also bring the conversation around bringing in new technologies such as AI and machine learning in product development and engineering design. So that's what I do right now. It's heavily interfacing with purchasing, our suppliers, so a lot of software vendors, and our IT delivery teams that actually go and deploy these tools out for us. That's what I do at work. Outside of work, like I said, I do a few things that revolve primarily around young people and community and giving them opportunities.
Fantastic. Wow. So is there a tough problem in our industry that you feel that we're facing? Is there?
I think so the challenge that Rolls-Royce SMR is out to deliver on is providing clean, affordable energy to all. Like that's the tagline, that's the vision, that's what we want to do, right? The reason SMRs, so small modular reactors, is because historically large infrastructure projects have ran over cost, over schedule. And with SMRs, we try to bring in sort of more manufacturing style capabilities in terms of providing better confidence over cost and schedule. So we can deploy at scale, and we know we know how long a project is going to take. And so we have better control over it. I think more interestingly, the challenge around the engineering software delivery, which is the area I'm working on, is this interface between the various industries that are involved in creating an SMR. So we work with a lot of mechanical engineers, we work with a lot of process and plant development engineers, we work with a lot of civil and construction and infrastructure engineers and architects. And if you think about from an IT delivery perspective, all of those types of engineering have their own tool sets, their own data formats, their own way of processing data and information and exchanging it, and bringing all of that together so that we have a connected, cohesive digital thread and a delivery of a product design. That bit is really challenging. Like it's a first time ever sort of engineering software challenge that even the vendors are really interested in. We're really interested in, because if we can figure that out better, it helps us grow at scale. And then, adding on to all of that is obviously we then want to add in the layer of manufacturing, which has a different way of working as well. So there's a lot around tools there that I've inherently talked about. But as I have learned through Matt and a lot of the coaching we have right now, is a lot of problems feel like tools problems, but inherently the ways in which we resolve them should be people first. So people, process, and then tools. And so a lot of the challenges that we're trying to work through right now are just better collaboration across all of these different ways of working and different engineering groups and IT and purchasing and values, all of those value streams coming together.
That's really good. And is there anything, are you using anything that helps everybody? So, because, I remember, I recall years ago when I went into a new team, they were doing some really fantastic enterprise transformation, and I went in to help product owners there. I know my mistake was because I was told, can you stop talking technical talk?
Yeah.
Can you not use all this jargon? So what's helping to get everybody thinking, talking?
Yeah.
What's helping?
So so the journey actually started from a bit of training that Matt was delivering on Kanban systems.
Mm-hmm.
But then the way in which we've adopted those within our delivery value streams is through the Obeya technique,
Mm-hmm.
which is very much around bringing people together, collaborating, and visual ways of working. It also adopts a lot of product ways of working and product ways of thinking. And ultimately what that means is we try and visualize all of the work through things like Kanban boards and understand what all the work we're delivering is, where is it getting stuck, who's working on each of those pieces, and we all huddle together around that visualization so that everyone has a hopefully more and more consistent understanding of where we are, where things are getting stuck, and how they can contribute and how they can help. Just bringing that piece together has been really interesting because there's so much volume of work going on everywhere, and this is across the engineering industry, across the IT delivery industry, that everybody's doing so much work that the moment you start to just visualize all of it and bring it together and bring those people together, it's a bit overwhelming, and it just, you step back and you go, hang on a minute, is that part of the problem? Like, are we doing too many things? Mm-hmm. And why are half of them blocked, and that sort of, so it just starts bringing the conversation more around the realities of what are we actually delivering and why is it stuck, which has been really helpful.
That's really great to hear that.
Yeah.
It really is useful. It's a little bit like individually, you started the conversation in that way, where individually people may have problems, and they are their individual problems. Then we put more problems together and compound that, then actually it does seem like it's just not manageable.
Yeah.
But if you just chip away at things or step back from something that's too big, too mammoth, because sometimes I suppose it's the maturity, isn't it, that not everybody's got the maturity to think high level and low level.
Yeah.
If they've not had the experience, is there anything that you Kanban systems are great. Any kind of visualizing tools that you would recommend to help with high level, low level?
Yeah, I mean the thing we use most is just a sort of virtual whiteboard. So there's lots of tools available. You can use Miro, Mural, Lucid Spark. There's lots of options available like that. The benefit and the beauty of just using a whiteboard blank space, more than anything else, is the flexibility and adaptability it gives you to be able to make it represent the realities of what the work are. So a very frequent example we get of that is, people saying, well, why don't we use Jira or DevOps and all of those things? And very rapidly, the conversation inherently goes into tools rather than practices. Whereas a lot of what we're doing is more about the practices than the tools. And so we're kind of indifferent to what tool is being used, as long as we can all get an understanding and see where the work is and who's working on it and where it gets stuck. That's ultimately the conversation everybody wants to have, right? Yeah. And the beauty of, what used to be just a physical space and you could use Post-its and do it that way. If everyone's meeting in person, then great, do that. If you're more a virtual team or a hybrid team, then the benefit of this is you can whip it up anywhere. But also the flexibility of just having an infinite blank space is that you can help make it represent what the reality of the work is rather than what the system you're using allows you to represent. I'll explain a little bit more about that with a simple example, right? Like, a company might have DevOps set up such that each ticket item has owners. but you can only have one owner. And usually what will end up happening is people will start assigning owners as the person who's responsible for delivering the work, or the person that's working on that piece of work. There's very few pieces of work that one person is delivering, because we're in a very highly collaborative environment that usually involves 5, 6, 7, 8 people inputting a piece into a piece of work to be delivered over a span of even a week. And all of a sudden, just having the one person on and then visually representing that, when you bring that up in front of people, it looks, oh, it was only one person doing everything. And then the conversation goes to, oh, but that's not the truth. Okay, so we're not representing the truth. So when we're getting together every week, we're not talking about the truth. So how can we just best represent the reality? Like, not the map, not what the systems allow us or what we want to see, but the reality. Like, what does the terrain look like, not what does the map look like? So any tool that allows you to do that, just use that.
Just really fantastic. It's just reminded me of one of the Trainline app. I think it's the Trainline actually app, or it could have been another one. But I remember when they released a feature where, when it's really busy, they ask you, are there any seats available near where you're sitting?
All right.
And things like that. So sometimes problem solving some of those immediate niggly bits can be quite useful things.
Yeah.
And it may not be the be all and end all of a product feature, but it can really help with flow.
It's the same thing, right? Like, around just helping people. Like, there's this classic sort of case study or example that gets referenced a lot in sort of the IT delivery world, is around the tube and how, before they had, like, when the next train is arriving, it was causing a lot of anxiety because people would be waiting and not know how long they have to wait. And the assumption was, well, we need more trains. But actually the reality was not, we need more trains. As long as people know how long they have to wait, they can just manage that expectation. So we need signboards that tell people what to expect next. And so you're showing people the reality so they're not guessing and left anxious. And so the Obeya practice does the same thing. It just helps people understand, well, this is where we are. This is what we're working on. And this is what is not being worked on. So manage your expectations accordingly. And there's lots of examples of just that psychology of understanding what is happening and giving people the realist version of what is happening, not what should be happening. And Trainline's a great example with that, right? Like, there's, even when you've booked a ticket, you can see the status of your train, and it's not just the status as in delayed or early. It is stuck here. It is left at 4:15 instead of 4 o'clock, so you should expect a 15. So you can live track the train all of a sudden, and so you're less anxious, or at least you're better informed with what you should do next. So it helps with better decision making, even in a business context, right?
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Thank you. We've really piled on the detailed conversation. Great. I'm just going to work through these.
Yeah.
So can you walk us through a big decision? How did you get there?
Yeah. I think a big decision has been around these whole ways of working. So I'll reference that quite regularly, because it's changed not just personally but professionally how I see work and systems of delivery and flow of work. And it started about 2 years ago when Matt joined us. We did the training, and it comes back to the conversation I was having earlier, is that you have a decision whether, once you go on a training and you have a coach, you have a decision at the end of that training or that coaching, like, do you engage or do you not engage? And I think historically, perhaps around the engineering spheres, there's, and actually most professional work in the UK, because it's very heavily process driven, and the country tends to be very process driven, to the benefit of a lot of delivery that we have, as a country, the UK has done. The default assumption in training a lot of young graduates have is that if we add more processes, things will get better. And yet there are a lot of instances when we're adding a lot of new processes and things are not getting better, but we're still reluctant to try something new. And so there's this, like, learning from sort of more the spiritual development from some of my experiences there, is we have these two facets that we're heavily taught not to sort of feed into, is blind ignorance and blind faith. And blind faith is like, the processes will always make it better. And it's like, well, that's blind faith until, like, go try it. And if it's not improving it, then you should take your faith away, like in just adding more processes. And blind ignorance is, well, here's a new way of trying, delivering more in an adaptive, agile way. Do you want to try that? And blind ignorance is, I'm not going to try anything different or anything new. So avoiding blind faith and blind ignorance in any decision-making opportunity you have is always, and that is the agile way. It's go, learn, try, adapt, and try, adapt, and learn. And so that journey of trying the old way didn't work, engaging in the new way and actively taking on the coaching, and trusting the coaching and only trusting it, testing it, to see if the results actually materialize, and then getting back the results. So yes, that works, has been really good. And for me, that personal anecdote that I keep sharing is because we're involved in so much in community projects at home, my wife and I have changed the way we think about our work in a given week. Like, we have a simple sort of Kanban board in Obeya that we look to try and manage every week. And so it works in a setting of 2. It also works in a setting of the community we work with is about 200 people, and it works in that setting because whenever we're organizing new events with the team now, that's the way in which we see our work and manage the flow. And it works in a setting of a large organization with 1,000 people. And so that has been a big sort of change and a big decision. And for me, it's been about trying and being open, but also, now that I've learned it in one setting, how can I use that in other settings?
So the Obeya system is making things visual or informing people, or those as well, and lots of other things.
I think it's that and lots of other things. There's a great, we'll reference it if we can. There's a great series of posts that we've done on LinkedIn in and around. It's called the Obeya story. It's about all of the different things. There's about between 15 and 20 different sort of posts and facets to what the Obeya process is. It's not something we've invented but it's just, there is a lot of, it's more the practice of how can you utilize things like, a Kanban board to collaborate and deliver and manage your flow better, by bringing in people and getting them to getting everyone to understand the value stream.
I like it. Yeah. I like it a lot. I mean, obviously it's a system, it's a, way of working, but it sort of is a little bit like, we know there's a process and there's a system in all countries when it comes to the education system. Yep. We know that schools have timetables, subjects, teachers, students, and we know that they also have summer holidays or Christmas holidays. So everybody knows what's going on. And I suppose the thing is, you can know what's going on if you can be informed if you pay attention. But if you don't, then you're... that's down to the individual. Yeah.
I think a big part of the Obeya practice for us is about, our sort of challenge has always been with a little bit of, 5-10 minutes of introduction and navigating around a visual sort of board. Every time someone wants to go and understand something, it should not take more than a couple of minutes. And that's all levels. I think you picked on a really good thing earlier, is that, we have levels of delivery and levels of governance and levels of the thing that people are interested in. But what we found is that with one visual, we're able to satisfy the needs of somebody that's, a dev that's delivering a piece of work, through to an engineering director that's interested in, well, when am I going to, how is that piece of work coming along? And just doing that very visually means people can get a snapshot, and very quickly, without getting into the detail, they can get into the detail if they want to, but without getting into if they just want a quick snapshot, get to the answer of where can I contribute? Because that's the thing, most people, genuinely, everybody wakes up and tries to make an impact, right? And so what most people are looking for is, where can I come in and contribute and help this thing move? So we do that really easily with putting blockers on with things that are getting stuck, and so people can, and they're pink stickies is what we call them. So as soon as you come on a board and there's no pink stickies, you're like, great, everything's fine, move on. And you come on and there's a pile of pink stickies everywhere, like, great, there's work for me to contribute to. And that's also an upward model of sort of leadership, is we try and set work for everyone else that is there to try and help us, that these are the things you can contribute to.
I really like that. I think I'm going to try this with my bigger, wider family, and have a Kanban board. Great. And ask people to put things up there, and then put a colour sticky on it, virtually, to say they might be stuck on something. Yeah. It could be anything. It could be their well-being, or it could just be, maybe it could be, I don't know, an overwhelming of maybe financial decisions they have to make, or I'm going to try that.
It's great. And it moves the conversation really quickly into how can we help? Because the number of times people have conversations around trying to understand the work and who's delivering it and how's it going. Versus this very quickly gets you to, can we do more? It's like, great, we can do more. Oh, can we move fast? Can we make flow faster? Great. How can we make flow faster? Take off the blockers. So the conversation moves really quickly to, well, these are the current things that we're stuck with. So if you can help us with those, great. Flow will happen naturally. But also then retrospectively learning, when we take off the blockers, we cluster them. So we don't just get rid of them. We cluster them around. These are the systemic things that we want to try and improve. So if sustainably in the future we want to be delivering faster, if there's anything you can do to help with resolving these issues, which then over time we should start seeing fewer and fewer of them, we will start moving naturally faster. And it is what is happening here right now, not a hypothesis, not an assumption, it is from the ground. This is exactly what's happening.
Precisely, yeah. No, thank you. Wow. So, right, it was great. You walked us through a big decision. What would you advise someone who's starting out in their career?
I think it's back to some of the things that I've said earlier, like in and around, being open, like don't have blind faith, but also like don't just trust things, ask questions and learn and be open to learning, but also just don't have sort of blind ignorance and not trust anything different to perhaps what you've learned or been trained in. And so being open about opportunities and trying them and learning, that is, again, the agile way of learn, adapt, I think has led me to where I am in terms of just trying lots of different things. Also trying, improve the circle of influence the things that are within your circle of influence, try and help other people have a better day. And I think the last one is also probably around like work is a facet of your life. And I think a lot of people struggle with that, is like, especially early careers when, schooling and university has been the only thing that has been determining your success. And then you get into work. And so you assume whatever you're doing at work is the only thing that determines your success. But actually, there's a lot more beyond that. And so acknowledging that and having open conversations with your work colleagues about, there are times when work is the most important thing. And there are times when work is work. And I have to then draw a line. Then that's a very healthy conversation to have and acknowledge very early on.
That's very nicely put, really nicely put. So if you had a billboard which inspires future professionals, what would that say?
A billboard. I think just something probably around continue adapting, like just being open to change and adapting to that change and learning to be able to adapt to that change, I think is probably what's most useful to people coming into careers.
Yeah. I really like your blind faith and blind ignorance.
Yeah.
Try and avoid that.
Yes, yeah. That's been a really good, useful one. And I think the other one also, and it's less of a billboard one, but it's one that my dad references his dad telling him, and that was, and this is to do with like as soon as you start working professionally, like this whole thing of also comparison starts, and am I doing well enough and all of that. And my grandfather used to say that there is no limits to the number of things that other people will have that you will always feel you don't have. And the example he would give is, if you have a bike, you'll think, oh, that guy has a car. If you get a car, oh, that guy has a boat. If you get a boat, oh, that guy has a ship. If you get a ship, oh, that guy has a... There are no limits. It is infinitely possible for other people to have more things than what you have. But what you should be looking at is, what are the things you have that other people have not had, and how fortunate you are to have that. So that also is just a very settling, humbling feeling of, I'm really fortunate that I have the things that I have, because there are so many. It is also infinitely possible for other people to have none of the things that you have. And so changing your mindset to that as early on as you can, in part also helps with, the conversation we're having about the flight. Like, there are so many people that fly that don't make it back in certain instances. So at least we made it back. And yes, it was a day or two late, but we're there. It's fine. And so that's been another sort of bit of learning that's really useful for people starting out.
Umang, thank you so much. I feel so fortunate that you came to the show and you shared your insights. I'm deeply, deeply humbled to know you. It's just wonderful. Thank you so much.
No, likewise. Right back at you. It's been great. Like, very nice, very open conversation. And I've loved sharing it. It's been very reflective for me as well to just be able to share some of these things and get to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it, folks. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And please may I ask you to subscribe to our channel so we may get more people in the studio. And thank you so much for now. Till next time.